Have you ever made a mistake so catastrophic that it could start an intergalactic incident? I sat down in the wrong seat, and when I tried to stand, the most powerful woman in three-star systems grabbed my hand and whispered those words that would change everything. The observation deck was packed that morning. Hundreds of delegates crammed into the circular chamber aboard the Celestial Summit Station, and I was just trying to find somewhere anywhere to sit during the historic peace negotiations between Earth and the Valorian Empire. I'd only been working as a junior cultural liaison for 6 weeks, barely knew how to operate the translation chip behind my ear, and definitely didn't understand the color-coded seating arrangement that apparently everyone else had memorized. All I saw was an empty seat near the front with a decent view of the speaking platform, so I took it, setting down my datapad and exhaling with relief that I'd made it before the proceedings began. The seat was incredibly comfortable, some kind of adaptive material that molded perfectly to my body, and I remember thinking that the diplomatic corps really didn't spare any expense. That's when I noticed the silence spreading around me like ripples in water. The delegates seated nearby had stopped their conversations mid-sentence, their faces turning toward me with expressions ranging from shock to horror. And one Valorian officer's violet eyes went so wide I thought they might actually pop out of his head. "What?" I whispered to the woman next to me, a stern-looking ambassador from the Mars colonies I vaguely recognized. She didn't answer, just slowly angled her body away from me as if I were radioactive. My stomach dropped. What had I done? I started to stand, heat flooding my face as I realized I must have taken someone important's seat, probably some dignitary who would be furious. And that's when she arrived. The crowd parted like a curtain, and I saw her for the first time. She was breathtaking in a way that had nothing to do with appearances and everything to do with presence, the kind of person who changes the gravity of a room just by entering it. Her hair cascaded past her shoulders in waves of silver platinum that caught the light from the observation windows, and her skin had this subtle luminescent quality, like moonlight on water. She wore a tailored outfit somewhere between military uniform and haute couture, deep midnight blue with silver accents that suggested both authority and elegance. And as she moved closer, I noticed her ears tapered to delicate points that swept back gracefully. Her eyes found mine, an unusual shade of amber with flecks of gold, and for a moment everything else disappeared. I bolted upright so fast I nearly knocked over my datapad. "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize." The words tumbled out in a panic. Her hand closed around mine, warm and surprisingly gentle, and every muscle in my body froze. "Don't get up," she said softly, her voice carrying a melodic accent that made each word sound like music. "Stay here." It wasn't a request. It wasn't a command either. It was something else entirely. Something that sounded almost like hope. She settled into the seat beside mine, the one I hadn't even noticed, and the entire observation deck erupted in barely suppressed whispers. My translation chip was going haywire, picking up fragments in a dozen languages. Is that really next to a human? What is she doing? Security breach? My brain finally caught up with the situation, and with creeping, mortifying horror, I realized who was still holding my hand. The silver hair, the luminescent skin, the way every single Valorian in the room had turned to face our direction with expressions of reverence and confusion. I had accidentally sat in the seat reserved for the honor guard of Queen Lyranus Velshar, sovereign ruler of the Valorian Empire, and she'd just told me to stay. I was going to be executed. No, worse, I was going to cause an intergalactic incident and then be executed. "Your heart is racing," she observed, still not releasing my hand, and there was the tiniest hint of amusement in her voice. "Are you afraid of me?" "I didn't know this was your section," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just a junior liaison. I thought it was general seating." "I swear I wasn't trying to breathe," she interrupted, and the gentle command in her tone actually made me obey. I took a shaky breath, then another, and slowly my panic subsided enough for rational thought to return. "What's your name?" she asked. "Marcus Webb, Your Majesty," I said, desperately trying to remember the proper forms of address from my training. "I apologize for my ignorance. I'll move immediately. I asked you to stay, Marcus Webb." The way she said my name, carefully pronouncing each syllable, sent an odd flutter through my chest. "Unless my presence makes you uncomfortable?" It was such an absurd question that I almost laughed. The Queen of the Valorian Empire, ruler of 47 worlds, asking if I was uncomfortable. "No, I just..." I don't understand why you'd want me to. Something shifted in her expression, a crack in the composed royal facade, and for just a moment I saw something vulnerable beneath it. Because you're the first person in 3 days who has looked at me like I'm just another delegate trying to find a seat, she said quietly. Everyone else sees the crown, even when I'm not wearing it. The proceedings began before I could respond. The summit mediator taking the platform to outline the day's agenda, but I couldn't focus on a single word. My hand was still in hers, resting on the armrest between us, and she showed no indication of letting go. It felt surreal, like I'd fallen into someone else's life. I snuck a glance at her profile as she watched the speaker, noting the way her jaw tightened at certain phrases. The slight furrow that appeared between her brows when the mediator mentioned territorial concessions. She wasn't just beautiful. There was an intelligence in her eyes that was frankly intimidating, and a weight to her posture that spoke of impossible burdens. You're staring, she murmured, without looking at me. Sorry, I whispered back, face heating. I'm just trying to figure out if this is real or if I'm having a very strange dream. The corner of her mouth quirked up. If you were dreaming, would I be more or less terrifying? Honestly, about the same. That earned me a quiet laugh, so soft that only I could hear it, and the sound made something warm bloom in my chest. Her thumb brushed absently across my knuckles, and I wondered if she even realized she was doing it. The morning session dragged on for hours. Various representatives presenting positions on trade agreements and border disputes. And through it all, Queen Lyranus never released my hand. People noticed. Of course they noticed. I could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes on us, could practically hear the frantic messages being sent to superiors and news networks. By the lunch recess, I was certain someone from Earth's diplomatic team would drag me away, and possibly throw me out an airlock for whatever protocol I was destroying. Instead, when the mediator called for a break, Lyranus stood and gently tugged my hand. Walk with me, she said, and again it was that strange space between request and command. My legs moved on autopilot, following her as she navigated through the crowd that parted instantly before her. Her security detail materialized from nowhere. 4 imposing Valorian guards, who surrounded us at a discreet distance as she led me away from the observation deck. Down a corridor I hadn't explored, toward a smaller chamber with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the stars. She finally released my hand, and I felt the absence like a physical thing. You can leave if you want, she said, her back to me as she gazed out at the cosmos. I won't hold you here against your will, and I'll ensure there are no consequences for the seating. Misunderstanding. Why do I feel like there's a but coming? I asked. She turned, and the vulnerability I'd glimpsed earlier was back, more pronounced now. But I would like you to stay. Not as a liaison, not as a representative of Earth, just as Marcus. I'd been trained to navigate complex diplomatic situations, to weigh my words carefully and consider the political implications of every action. All of that training evaporated. Okay, I said simply. Tell me why. She moved to one of the seats by the window, and I joined her, close enough that our knees almost touched. Do you know what it's like, she began slowly, to have every word you speak analyzed for hidden meanings? To have every relationship in your life shadowed by questions of political advantage? To wonder if anyone sees you as a person rather than a position? I thought about my own life, about the overwhelming pressure of trying not to fail at my first real assignment, about how desperately I'd wanted to prove myself. It wasn't the same scale, not even close, but I understood the essence of it. I think, I said carefully, everyone feels invisible sometimes even when people are looking right at them. Her eyes met mine, and something electric passed between us. When you sat down this morning, you weren't trying to gain favor or make a statement. You were just tired and looking for a place to rest. Do you know how rare that is for me? So I'm what? A novelty. I didn't mean for it to come out harsh, but the words had an edge. No, she said firmly. You're a reminder that not everything is about politics and power. She hesitated, and a faint color rose in her luminescent cheeks. You're someone who makes me feel like myself again. The moment stretched between us, heavy with unspoken things, and I realized with startling clarity that I was in serious danger here. Not from her guards or diplomatic fallout, but from the way my heart was starting to race for entirely different reasons. I'm nobody, I said quietly. I'm a junior liaison who barely knows what he's doing. In 3 months, I'll probably be reassigned to filing reports in some office on Earth. You're a queen. This is impossible, she finished. Foolish? Inappropriate? I was going to say complicated. She laughed, a real laugh this time, and it transformed her entire face. Marcus Webb, master of understatement. We talked for an hour, then two, missing the entire lunch recess. She told me about growing up in the Valorian palace, trained from birth to rule, never allowed to have friends who weren't vetted for political reliability. I told her about my chaotic childhood, moving between Earth's colony stations, always the new kid, never quite fitting in anywhere. We discovered we'd both lost our mothers, young, both carried that specific kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people but truly known by none. She had a sharp wit that caught me off guard, a tendency to make dry observations that had me struggling not to laugh during her more serious moments. When she talked about her responsibilities, her voice carried a weight that made my chest ache. They want me to agree to terms that would cripple my people's economy for a generation, she said at one point, her hands clenched in her lap. But if I don't, the conflict continues, and more lives are lost. What kind of choice is that? Without thinking, I placed my hand over hers. The kind that no one should have to make alone. Her fingers intertwined with mine, and we sat like that, holding hands, while watching distant stars go by, and I felt something fundamental shift inside me. When the afternoon session was called, she stood reluctantly. I have to go back, she said. I know. Sit with me again? It wasn't until later that I realized she'd asked, not commanded. The afternoon session was different. I understood now what I was watching, could see the strain in Lyranis's posture as Earth's lead negotiator pushed for concessions, could feel her tension through our joined hands as her own advisors whispered urgently in her ear. During a particularly heated exchange, her grip tightened almost painfully, and I leaned close. Breathe, I whispered, echoing her earlier advice to me. She did, some of the rigidity leaving her shoulders, and squeezed my hand in silent thanks. That night, the station's rumor mill was in full chaos. I was stopped no less than 7 times on my way to my quarters, everyone from junior staffers to senior ambassadors trying to figure out what was happening. My direct supervisor, Ambassador Chen, actually cornered me outside my door. Do you have any idea what you've done? She demanded, though her expression was more amazed than angry. Made a friend? I offered weakly. The Valorian delegation has agreed to 3 major concessions they've refused for months, Chen said, shaking her head in disbelief. Their advisors say the Queen is in the best mood they've seen since negotiations started. Marcus, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I wanted to protest that. I wasn't doing anything. That we'd just talked. But Chen was already walking away, muttering about unpredictable variables and human elements. My unit chimed. An encrypted message with a royal seal. Garden. Observation dome. 1 hour. Come alone, please. My hands were shaking as I typed a response. I'll be there. The garden dome was a biodiversity project, filled with plants from a dozen worlds arranged in careful ecosystems. I found her on a bridge over a stream populated by tiny bioluminescent fish from her homeworld, their light painting her face in shifting blue and green. She'd changed from her formal attire into something simpler, though still elegant, and her hair was loose around her shoulders. She looked younger somehow, more relaxed. You came, she said, and there was relief in her voice. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you might have been warned away. My advisors are quite concerned about the human distraction, as they're calling you. I moved to stand beside her on the bridge, close enough that our arms touched. Should I be insulted or flattered? Flattered, she said immediately. You've disrupted decades of diplomatic protocol in a single day. That takes talent. We watched the fish for a while in comfortable silence, and I marveled at how easy this felt, how natural. Can I ask you something? I said eventually. Anything. Why me, really? There are thousands of people on this station, diplomats and cultural experts who actually know what they're doing. Why did you ask a junior liaison who sat in the wrong seat to stay? She turned to face me fully, and in the soft bioluminescent light, she was almost impossibly beautiful. But it was what I saw in her eyes that made my breath catch, a loneliness and longing that mirrored something deep in my own chest. Because when you looked at me this morning, do you know what I saw in your eyes? She reached up, her hand hovering near my face before gently touching my cheek. I saw someone who was also a little bit lost. Someone who was trying so hard to be what everyone expected. Someone who understood what it meant to wear a mask. Her thumb brushed my cheekbone. And because when you took my hand, you weren't trying to hold the queen's hand. You were just trying to hold mine. The confession hung in the air between us, and I knew I was standing at a crossroads. I could step back, maintain professional distance, protect my career and my heart from the inevitable complications. Or I could be honest. I'm falling for you, I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. Which is insane, because it's been one day and you're royalty and I'm nobody, and this can't possibly work. But I needed you to know because she kissed me. It was soft and tentative and tasted like starlight, and when she pulled back, her eyes were bright. You're not nobody, Marcus Webb, she whispered. You're the first person in years who's made me remember who I am beneath the crown. We stood there holding each other while alien fish swam below and stars wheeled overhead. And for a moment, nothing else mattered. Reality, of course, came crashing back. Over the next week, our impossible relationship became the worst-kept secret on the station. We stole moments between sessions, finding quiet corners to talk and hold hands and occasionally kiss when we were sure no one was watching, though someone always was. The negotiations, paradoxically, went better than anyone had hoped. Lyranus was sharper, more focused, and found creative compromises that satisfied both sides. Her advisors were baffled, but pleased. Then the ultimatum came. Her chief counselor, a stern man named Velthor, confronted us in one of our stolen moments. Your Majesty, he said, his tone ice, the council has spoken. This entanglement is damaging to the Empire's dignity. It must end. Lyranus's hand tightened in mine. The council doesn't dictate my personal relationships. The council, Velthor said coldly, reminds you that your personal relationships become matters of state. This human is unsuitable in every possible way. No rank, no status, no political value. The people will never accept enough. Lyranus's voice cracked like a whip, and I saw the queen then, the ruler of 47 worlds, and she was terrifying. I have given my life to duty. I have sacrificed everything for the Empire. This one thing, this one person who sees me as Lyranus rather than a symbol, I will not surrender. Velthor's expression was granite. Then the council will have no choice but to question your fitness to rule. The silence that followed was crushing. I felt Lyranus trembling beside me, and I understood the choice she was facing. Me, or everything she'd ever known. Her duty, or her heart. I couldn't let her make that choice. Your Majesty, I said formally, pulling my hand from hers. Your counselor is right. I'm a distraction. You can't afford. Your people need you, and I'm in the way. I saw the heartbreak in her eyes, but also the terrible understanding. She knew I was right. Marcus, it's okay, I said, forcing a smile that felt like it was cracking my face. We both knew this was impossible. I walked away before I could change my mind, before I could see if she would call me back. She didn't. The next 3 days were the worst of my life. I threw myself into work, avoiding anywhere she might be, ignoring the concerned messages from colleagues. The negotiations were concluding, the peace treaty nearly finalized, and soon everyone would disperse to their respective worlds. I would go back to Earth and try to forget the queen who had held my hand and made me feel like I mattered. On the final day, the signing ceremony was magnificent, held in the Grand Hall with representatives from hundreds of worlds in attendance. I stood at the back, just another face in the crowd, watching as Lyranus signed the historic treaty, her movements precise and regal. She was the queen again fully, and I was proud of her even as my heart broke. Then she spoke. Before we conclude, her voice rang out clear and strong. I wish to address a matter of personal importance. The hall went silent. For generations, Valorian royalty has been bound by tradition, expected to sacrifice personal happiness for duty. I have accepted this burden, as did my mother and her mother before her. But I have recently learned something that I believe my people need to understand. She looked directly at me, and I felt like I was falling. I learned that true strength isn't found in isolation. That allowing yourself to care for someone, to be vulnerable, to be seen as you truly are, doesn't make you weak. It makes you whole. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I have found someone who reminds me every day why I fight for peace, why I believe in building bridges between worlds. Someone who sees not my crown, but my heart. And I will not apologize for that, nor will I hide it. She descended from the platform, moving through the stunned crowd, and she was walking toward me. People parted. whispers exploding around us. And then she was there, taking my hand again, in front of hundreds of witnesses and countless cameras. Marcus Webb, she said, her voice softer now, but no less determined. I am asking you, in front of all these people, to stay. Not for a moment. Not for a day. Stay with me. Tears were burning in my eyes. You're asking me to give up everything I know. I'm asking if you think what we have is worth it. I thought about my small apartment on Earth, my forgettable job, my careful plans for an unremarkable life. Then I looked into her amber eyes and saw a future I'd never dared to imagine. Yes, I said. Yes, it's worth it. This time when she kissed me, the room erupted in chaos, some cheering, some protesting, but I didn't hear any of it. All I knew was her, and the impossible choice we'd both made, and the uncertain future that stretched ahead. 3 months later, I stood on the balcony of the Valorian Palace, looking out over a city of silver spires and flowing light. Behind me, I could hear Lyranus arguing with her council about agricultural reforms, her voice sharp with the passion I'd come to love. I'd become her cultural advisor, officially, helping bridge the gap between Valorian and human perspectives. But really, I was just the person who reminded her to eat during long sessions, and held her hand when the weight of the crown became too heavy. It wasn't easy. There were protests, political complications, moments when I questioned if I'd made the right choice. But then she would find me, like she did now, slipping away from her counselors to wrap her arms around me from behind. What are you thinking about? She murmured against my shoulder. How I accidentally sat in the wrong seat and it changed my entire life. She laughed, that beautiful sound I'd first heard on the summit station. Best mistake you ever made? I turned in her arms, looking at this impossible woman who had chosen me against all odds and expectations. No, I said, kissing her softly. Best decision I ever made was staying when you asked, and as the twin moons rose over the Valorian skyline, I knew that sometimes the wrong seat is exactly where you need to be, and sometimes the most impossible thing is the only thing worth having. The Queen had taken my hand and asked me to stay, and I had, and in doing so, I'd found not just love, but home.